going forward now. So good evening, everybody, to our 87th Shmiras Halashon. We are learning Shmiras Halashon on behalf of our grandson, Netaniel Shai Devora, who was born more than 2 years ago with quite a challenging challenge. He was born with his jaw locked. The Biala Rebbe from Bnei Brak had asked that we have at least 10 men start to learn Shmiras Halashon. So my wife said, that's your assignment. So we set up a Zoom platform. We thought we'd do, I don't know, a week or two, or, we've ended up doing much more, and we continue to do it because he still needs a big refuah shlema. Many other people out there still need a big refuah shlema. One of the people we've mentioned for the last month or two, Dr. Fine, has had a remarkable recovery. And so much so that a month ago he was in the hospital, and today I was davening with him at 770. I ran into him. He was there davening, and we sat together, and it's pretty extraordinary what Hashem can do. He can send doctors, but he can also heal directly himself. And I'm a witness to that because I had major surgery 6 months ago, and Hashem healed it. So I'm here walking around and continuing doing the shiurs. So thank you for joining us, and the platform is yours.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. It's a real honor and a real kavod to be here amongst such chashuv important people. I'm just before we begin, I just want to say I'm humbled by Reb Tovia and the mishpacha, that it's not an easy thing to take a difficult situation and to turn to Hashem and say, what can I do? What can I do here in this situation to try to better it in a way of ruchnius? And I'm just very humbled by that, and all of the learning that you've done so far and all of the learning that you're going to continue to do should be a zchus for refuah shlema, a full refuah shlema for your grandson and for anybody else that needs one.
Amen.
So there's a teaching from Rav Aaron of Karlin, one of the early students of Baal Shem Tov, where he said, in a somewhat joking manner, but he said, if only people were as careful with what comes out of their mouth as with what they put into it. Now, obviously, what we put into our mouth and the way we're careful with kashrus is important, but he found that sometimes with what comes out of one's mouth, and we're not just, when we say what comes out of one's mouth, we're not just talking about what is permitted and what is not permitted, what is mutter and what is asr to say, but rather, do I use my words as building blocks? Do I use my words as opportunities to talk to Hashem in tefillah, in Torah? Do I use my words as an opportunity to help be machazik, to build people up? Or do I not view my words as important? And that's something Rav Aaron of Karlin said. If only people were as careful with what comes out of their mouth as with what they put in it. So how much of a focus do I have in the power of my words? I just want to start, just please interrupt me at any point with questions, comments, whatever it might be. Please feel free to do so. So interestingly enough, in the world of Karlin, from Rav Aaron of Karlin, from the same teaching, they take a very literal approach when they come to davening. When they come to davening, they take a pasuk in Tehillim that says, Kol atzmosai tomarna Hashem mikamocha. Now, what does that mean? It means that Kol atzmosai tomarna, with every fiber of my being, all of my bones, should say, Tomarna should say, Hashem mikamocha, Hashem who is like you. If you ever go into a Karlin or shul, they're yelling. They're simply yelling throughout the entire davening. They're taking a very literal sense that the ability of words, the ability of dibur, can have an impact. Now, there's a well-known medrash with one of the more interesting characters that we see throughout the Gemara, and we see in Midrashim and throughout. He might be the most famous slave that we know about in the Gemara, and that is Tavi, a man by the name of Tavi Avdi. He was referred to by Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel had this slave who was known to be a very big Talmid Chacham and an important person. Is brought in the Mishnah Sukkah, talks about how Tavi would be careful even with the halachas of Sukkah, and so on and so forth, that he was a big Talmid Chacham. He was a very well-learned man. He sent Tavi out to the marketplace, and this is in the Medrash in Vayikra, and he sends him out to the marketplace, and he says to him, get me a good food from the market. Get me the best food that you can from the market. And he comes back, and he brings him tongue. Now, they eat the tongue, and they go on. And the next day, he says, somewhat of a strange request, but Rabbi Gamliel says, bring me the worst food from the market. What does he come and bring back? He brings back tongue again, the same food. He brings back the same food, right? So the question was, what is it? The same food is good and bad? And he says that the ability of using your mouth, using your tongue to formulate words can lead to the best thing or it can lead to the worst thing. And that it all depends on the kavana, the way in which you're speaking, what you're doing with your words. And Rabbi Gamliel called over all his students and he said, Tavi taught us the most important lesson. He taught us the lesson that when your tongue is used for Lashon Hara, it can destroy, it can be the worst thing. But when your tongue is used for words of Kedusha, like Torah and Tefillah, or to say a kind word to someone, it's the greatest thing. Now that's why the pasuk in Mishlei says, right? It says, Pirya yochel v'avea biyad lashon v'chayim maves. Now that words, death and life is contained within the power of the tongue, within the power of speech, contains death and life. Is that really the ability to build somebody or to break someone is consisting within words, within the mouth. Now, there's an interesting Kedushas Levi in Parshas Emor, which talks about a pasuk. It says, when a nefesh becomes tamei, what should they do? They come to the Kohen. When someone is tamei, they come to a Kohen. Now, why do they come to the Kohen? The obvious question can be, they can come to a Beis Din, right? We had court systems. We had a Beis Din. So why are they coming to the Kohen? Why aren't they going to the court? Why aren't they going to their local rabbi? Why specifically do they need to find the Kohen? In other things, we don't find this. And this is when a person becomes tamei, and specifically if a person becomes tamei in the matters of tsaras. Why then does he go to the Kohen? Now, if you look at the pasuk carefully, it says, tamei lo lenefesh. It says, emor la kohanim, say to the kohanim, v'amarta lahem lenefesh lo yitamei. So what is the Kedushas Levi says, if we read it slightly differently and we say, Emor la kohanim, say to the kohanim, va'amarta lahem, and you say to them, l'nefesh, and you say to them to a nefesh in the way in which they speak to another person, in the way in which a person is talking and a person is interacting with another person, lo yitame. You have to make sure that you're not talking to them in a way in which they feel as if they are tamei, and feel in which they are tamei. That you have to be careful in which you're using words to empower them. I say that's the whole reason why when someone has tsaras, why does someone get tsaras? What's the reason? Someone gets tsaras when they speak Lashon Hara. So when they speak Lashon Hara and they get tsaras, what do they have to go to? They go to the Kohen. Now, what's unique about a Kohen? What does it say about the Kohen in the Mishnah on Avos? What do we know about Aaron HaKohen? To be a student of Aaron HaKohen means what? Ohev shalom v'rodef shalom. To love peace and chase after peace. And to try to make peace and harmony amongst people. And that was Aaron's role. When you had Moshe Rabbeinu was giving over the Torah and the laws to people, and Aaron was, so to speak, in the trenches, dealing with people's marital issues, dealing with people's issues with one another, and he was making shalom amongst them. He was making peace amongst them. So when someone has tsaras, when someone is in a state where they might be tamei, who's the best person to go to? The person that can look at them and he can understand them. And he can really listen, and he can be there for them in a deep way, in a real way, and not judge them, or rather judge them in a favorable sense, which is even greater than not judging, is to actively judge in a favorable sense. And that's why to be a Talmud of Aaron HaKohen means you look at opportunities, not just as they come to you, but you look at opportunities in which you can try to be mechazik people. That's a student of Aaron. Where you're searching, you're looking around in your life and you're saying, how can I be mechazik? How can I strengthen? How can I help? And that's why when it says l'nefesh lo yitame, in whatever interaction you have, when a person specifically is in such a situation where they are fragile, where they are delicate, where they feel ostracized, where they feel sent out from the rest of the community, That's when you need an Aaron HaKohen the most. That's when you need a Aaron HaKohen or a student of Aaron HaKohen to be able to look at them and say, I've got you, I see you, and I'm not here to judge, but rather I'm here to help you. And that's something that a student of Aaron can do. Now, through that is all done through the power of speech. So we said the person who gets saras, who becomes, because of Lashon Hara, so he goes to the Kohen, and the Kohen sees them in a place of positivity and finds a positive within them. And through that, he elevates their speech. He gives them the ability in which they feel that they can elevate their koach of speech. How are we doing so far? Any questions?
You're doing great, Rabbi. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay. Please stop me with any questions or comments at any time. I welcome it. So based on that idea, we're saying that there's an idea of using your speech in a positive way to help people, to grow, to use it, like we just said from the Pasuk in Mishlei, that biyad lashon chayim v'maves. Now, the Kedushas Levi on Pesach says, if you look at the word Pesach, what does the word Pesach means? To skip over, but it can mean something else also, right? That's why in English we call it Passover, passes over. But I know we're skipping Yontifs, but it's okay. So Pesach means what? You break up the word, it says Pesach. What does that mean? Peh is a mouth. Sach, communicating, speaking. A Pesach, a mouth is communicating. And that's the ability we have on Pesach. The Kedushas Levi says, Levi Yitzchak teaches us that on Pesach, we're given this ability for the rest of the year to communicate. Because the biggest part of slavery is when one feels they cannot express themselves. Biggest part of slavery is not that someone has a master forcing them to go somewhere, but rather that they don't feel that they can properly express, they can't properly say something over. They don't feel as if they have what to say, and they don't feel as if someone is there to listen. So the key of Pesach is communication. The teaching from the Ishbitzer, from the Meir Shiloach, where he says, what is the idea of...
Oh, sorry. Please keep going. That was a mistake.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah, so there's a teaching from the Ishbitzer where he says, what is the root of Lashon Hara? Meaning, ask a question. You have so many svarim, we have the Sefer Shmiras Halashon, right? That's the goal of all of these conversations, is to elevate and purify our speech. So what is the root of it? Where does it come from? Why does one speak Lashon Hara? Right? If you want to fix something, if you want to improve something, you can't just look at it in a topical sense and say, okay, so I used to speak Lashon Hara, now I'm making a decision not to. That helps. But the real way to improve, the real way to work on something is to get to the root of it, to get to the reason why one would speak Lashon Hara. So some might say, why do we speak Lashon Hara? Could be jealousy. Could be someone is jealous of someone else. These could be reasons. Someone has a problem with someone else, and it comes out by speaking negatively to harm them. But the Ishbitzer says it goes much deeper. Lashon Hara is not because you have a problem with someone else, but one speaks Lashon Hara when they don't believe that they have something of value to share, which is a wild thought. If I believe I have something worthwhile and valuable to share, then why would I spend my time talking about others? If you think about it, the power of speech is that there are many things one could talk about, right? Oftentimes we just speak, but if we think about what we're speaking about, right? Lashon Hara could be speaking negatively about somebody, but there's also neutral speech, kind of, it's not positive or negative. You speak about random things and stuff. But if someone really believes they have such a power of speech and believes in themselves that they have what to share, then what are they going to share? They're going to share ideas, dreams, aspirations, divrei Torah, whatever it might be. But for someone to believe in themselves, and this is the wild, I think a wild teaching from the Ishbitzer, that if one really believes in themselves, then Lashon Hara is not even enticing to them. It's not that one has to stop themselves from speaking Lashon Hara, but rather it's not even enticing. There's no appeal to it because you'd much rather be speaking about much more important things. So that's with the idea of believing in ourselves, of Pesach. Pesach that we got the ability to communicate. We have the ability to look at another person, whoever it might be, a friend, a spouse, a neighbor, the person in shul who's been sitting next to you for 20 years, and you never had a relationship that went much deeper than a good Shabbos, right? We all have people like that in our lives. And we say Pesach, the ability to communicate, is given to us. The ability for us to open up and to really be able to communicate to others is the ability of Pesach. And from the Ishbitzer is that comes from a place of believing in ourselves, believing that we have an ability to speak. And what's the biggest way to believe in this? Rav Nachman says, we say every morning, say, Rabba emunasecha. What does it mean, Rabba emunasecha? So people sometimes translate it to mean, Rabba emunasecha is that my faith in you is great. That's not what it means. Rabba emunasecha means your faith in me is great. What's the biggest proof that God's faith in you is great? We say this in the morning, is that you woke up. That's simple. It's that simple. If you woke up, then Rabba emunasecha, you woke me up today because you believe I've got something positive. I've got something I can contribute to the world. And if you're going to give me an ability to try to communicate, whether it's verbally or not, if you're giving me an ability to be here in this world where I can say something, then we're saying, Hashem, you gave me the ability to speak. You're giving me the ability to spread that light of being able to communicate. And because of that, it must be that I have what to communicate positive. And that's what the teaching of the Ishbitzer. That you give me the ability, if you gave me the ability to speak, it's that you believe that I can use it for something positive. Now, we'll learn just a little bit inside. I know most of this we've been talking outside, different ideas, but I happened to be learning a few days ago this piece from Hishtafach Nefesh, from Rav Nosson of Breslov, and I thought it really connected to what we've been talking about. So we'll read just a little bit inside. It says, Tzrichim leschazik ma'od ba'amuna shalema, that a person has to strengthen themselves with amuna, lahamin ba'atzmo, to believe in oneself, sheyesh lo koach lipol kol davar betfilaso, v'sichaso beinu lebein kono, that a person should believe in oneself, that through their tefillah, it is not a mundane exercise, that through their tefillah, they have the ability to actually impact the world around them, to impact their own life and to impact the world around them. Because a person can feel a certain chalishas hadas, a certain weakness in themselves. In this matter, because a person knows in his heart, and somebody could mistakenly feel that they're just saying words, and the words don't come easily, and it could be that the words that they're saying don't mean much to them. And therefore, a person doesn't necessarily strengthen themselves in tefillah. And this should be a focus of one's avoda, is what? As we said in the beginning, lipol kol davar b'tfilaso, that you have a koach in your tefillah to make an impact. Let's say for Hishtafchus HaNefesh is a collection of teachings from Rav Nachman that Rav Nosson of Breslov compiled, and through these teachings, they're all based on the ability of tefillah, Hishtafchus HaNefesh. And one of the main teachings that comes up again and again, it says, let's say somebody wants to speak. I know when Rav Tovia told me we could speak about anything that has to do with Shmiras Halashon, so I know I took this more to a place of tefillah than necessarily Shmiras Halashon, but I believe it's all tied together, because the Maggid of Mezrich says we have two approaches in Yiddishkeit. We have Sur Meira, and they're both very important. Sur Meira v'asei tov. Sur Meira means stay away from the negative. That would be looking at Shmiras Halashon from a perspective, a very important perspective, of what are the permitted ways to speak and what are the not permitted ways to speak. And Asay Tov would be, okay, so now that I understand there's a permitted way to speak, what is the proper way? What is the way I could use my words as a tool to connect to God and to Jews around me? So the Maggid of Mezrich says, Sur Meira v'asei tov means stop focusing on the Sur Meira v'asei tov and just focus on an Asei Tov. What happens when you focus on an Asei Tov? The Sur Meira will fall into place. Meaning, I can spend my time, and it's crucial to learn the details and the halachas of Shmiras Halashon, It's crucial. But when one elevates themselves to a place where they view their words as the greatest weapon in a positive sense, the greatest tool that they can use in their life, naturally it will fall away a struggle to speak negative, because they're going to be so empowered to use their words in a positive way. Now, Tavi, how are we on time?
I keep myself mute, so
okay.
you're doing great. You're saying well, and just keep going.
Okay, good.
For another 5-10 minutes, whatever you're comfortable. We're enjoying it. Thank you.
Perfect. Good. Thank you. Okay, just being mindful of everybody's time. But so based on that, continuing on that idea of your words are a powerful tool. So we have the idea, it says sof ma'aseh machshava tchila. So in the ability of speaking, it first comes from thought. So if we enter into the world of thought, we enter in, as opposed to just viewing ourselves as reactive, but rather there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So what's going on behind the scenes is that the world of thought is how we view ourselves. We've been speaking so far, how we view ourselves as having an ability to speak. That when I speak, when I give over, whatever it might be, the way I talk to anybody, it is powerful and impactful. There was this has maybe had one of the biggest impacts on me from such a short interaction. It was maybe a 30-second interaction that really changed the way I view things. I was living in Washington Heights at the time, and I haven't been on a subway in a little while, living in the suburbs. But in that subway station, there was an elevator to get down. You have to take this elevator. And in the elevator, there was a man who his job was, he had a chair and he sat there, and his job was to push the button of the elevator to go down. I don't know if this is still a thing. This is going back about 10 years. And his job was to sit there in this elevator, this underground, busy Washington Heights subway station. And his job was to sit there and push down and then push up. And he did this for 8 hours a day. And if you would imagine, you probably would assume this guy was not maybe in the best mood. Maybe he'd be grumbling. Maybe he'd be telling people to hurry up. You wouldn't imagine this guy would be in the best mood. But this was the happiest guy you ever met. And this guy, everybody that walked into his elevator, he viewed this as his office, this elevator. Anybody that walked into his elevator, he had the biggest smile. And he was schmoozing with everybody. And he knew people's names. And he was just having a blast, like it was a party. And from this 30-second interaction, I really got from, I learned so much of the power of a simple good morning with a big hello, with a big smile, of how much that can totally change the trajectory of someone's day. Because you don't know what someone's going through. You don't know what someone's day is looking like. You don't know what's going on in their head. And from one interaction, one quick little interaction with this guy, it made me completely change the way I view what a hello or a good morning could be and how that could impact somebody. So I don't know, hopefully one day he'll hear this, but I have a lot of akars hatov to that man that sat in the elevator in the Washington Heights subway station. But that idea that the words can be impactful. And with that, we'll learn one more thing, is in Likutei Moharan, Rav Nachman talks about Reish Pei Beis. Now, Reish Pei Beis means that when you think positively, the point of the piece is that when you think positive about somebody and speak positive about somebody, it actually elevates the positivity within them. Now, let's give a surface example of that. The most basic example would be, if I speak with kind words to somebody, then what happens? They'll usually reciprocate. They'll feel good. They'll feel respected. They'll feel honored. They'll feel someone's being kind to them. And that in turn will make a butterfly effect of just more positivity going on, right? That's the simplest. But Rav Nachman takes it much deeper, and he says that one speaks positive words about somebody or positive thoughts about somebody, even if they're not there, and even if they don't hear it, it's not in front of them. You in your house are thinking positive. You're being down the kafslos on someone. You're thinking positive. What happens? It actually elevates that within them. How so? because being that we all have a shared neshama, every Jew's neshama comes from Hashem, and as the Baal Tanya writes, it's a chelak elokam imal mamish. So in that sense, we are siblings. We are united as one through our souls. Therefore, on a metaphysical level, on a soul level, when you think positive about somebody else, that actually elevates them on a soul level. You have the ability to sit in your house by yourself and think good thoughts about people and say good words about people that they'll never hear and they'll never see. And that's ma'orer, and that's awakening positivity within them. And that's the real koach of positive dibur, of using your dibur as a tool, using your thought as a tool, and using your words as a tool. There was this one other story that I heard from Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, actually, that he was in a bakery with someone, with a friend, and they're having a coffee and a Danish. And as they're in this bakery, the worker there didn't look very happy and was grumbling and just kind of threw it down on their table. And his friend who was there with him was saying this was a stale 3-day-old Danish and whatever. It wasn't very good. And as Reb Shlomo takes a bite into it, he calls back the person working there and he says, "Did you make these?" And she goes, "Yes." And she's getting even more defensive, thinking he's going to complain. And he says, "This is the best Danish I've ever had." And his friend was saying it really wasn't very good, but he's going on and on about how good it was, and it was the tastiest, and going on and on and on and on. And as he's saying, he sees how she's softening up and how she's starting to smile a little bit. And what was the chiddush? And the friend said, I was sitting with him, said, by the time Reb Shlomo was done, the Danish actually tasted pretty good. So that was the kicker of the story, is that the positive words actually have an impact on the reality we are, not just in the way we think, but positive words have an actual impact on the reality that we live in. So with that, we should be able to be blessed to view whatever interactions we have with others. And just to recap some of the things we've said, to look at ourselves as students of Aaron HaKohen. Students of Aaron HaKohen are always looking to increase the shalom and increase the peace amongst each other. And with that, we should view that we have the ability, like we said in Ishtafkus HaNefesh, that nobody should feel like I don't have the ability to use my words positively, but rather that every single person has the ability to use their words to build each other up and to build themselves up and to express themselves to Hashem. Shkayach. Chaim.
Beautiful.
Very
So,
good, very good, Robert.
very
That's fantastic.
interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're still.
Thank
we're
you
still
very much.
here. We're still
That's
on,
the-
everybody.
It was very nice, beautiful.
Oh, thank you.